Hi friends, welcome back. Billionaire warns of something worse than recession in America. ओए होए, चलो देखें. वीडियो शुरू करते हैं. वीडियो शुरू करने से पहले अगर आप चैनल पर नए हो और आपने अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो जल्दी से पहले सब्सक्राइब के बटन और बेल आइकन को क्लिक कर लो ताकि आपको हमारे सारे न्यू वीडियोस के नोटिफिकेशन मिल जाएं जैसे हम अपलोड करें.
अगर आपको वीडियो पसंद आता है प्लीज लाइक एंड शेयर. चलिए शुरू करते हैं.
क्वेश्चन है कहाँ का बिलियनियर? यूएसए का ही कोई बिलियनियर बोल रहा है क्या? लग तो वही रहा है. देखते हैं क्यों बोल रहा है, क्या लॉजिक दे रहा है और बात में कितनी दम है. भैया यहाँ पे भी उसी टाइप की बातें हो रही हैं कि रिसेशन आएगा कि नहीं आएगा. कोई कहता नहीं आएगा, कोई कहता आएगा. पर लेट्स सी. पर जो ट्रम्प कर रहा है वो तो अपने देश के बेटरमेंट के लिए ही कर रहा है. अब उससे रिसेशन आ सकता है कि नहीं आ सकता है, वॉच करते हैं.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's the start of a new week and we are once again diving into a world on edge. Kicking off with a seismic shift in Washington, has President Donald Trump blinked in the US-China trade war? Why has he rolled back tariffs on technology products? Is this a win for Xi Jinping? What is the Chinese president up to? He's touring Southeast Asia as we speak. We will tell you why. Meanwhile, top banks and billionaires are sounding an alarm. Trump's policies could plunge the US into something worse than a recession. Markets are still feeling the heat, gold is soaring, and investors are scurrying. Where should you put your money in these turbulent times? We will discuss that. Also in focus, what's the new rule in the US that says foreign nationals must register or face deportation? Why Trump has called the latest Russian strike on Ukraine a mistake? What is the story of the US teen charged with killing his parents in a chilling plot to assassinate the US president?
ओ ये मैं कुछ देखी थी, हेडलाइंस देखी थी मैंने, अभी पढ़ा नहीं.
Advanced warship. What is India's new laser weapon that puts the country in an elite club? And all about the booming panic industry that is selling doomsday bunkers and flammable modes.
Yeah?
Are these the ultimate safe havens or just fear-driven fantasies? We'll discuss all of this. Listen more coming up. The headlines first. Donald Trump hosts the president of El Salvador.
ये तो मैंने पूरा सुना.
The world's coolest dictator is now a key ally of the US president who has been sending immigrants to a notorious Salvadoran prison. Trump claims the deportees are gang members, but his administration has mistakenly deported a Maryland resident to El Salvador.
नहीं, उसको क्लियर किया था उसने इसमें.
Indian fugitive Mehul Choksi arrested in Belgium. The diamond merchant fled India in 2018. The Indian government has sent a request for Choksi's extradition. He is accused of defrauding the Punjab National Bank of more than $1 billion. His nephew Nirav Modi is also an accused in the case. He was arrested in the UK in 2019 and remains in custody there. Gabon's junta chief wins the presidential election. Provisional results give him 90% of the vote. In August 2023, the junta leader ended
मुझे लगा ये छुटकू है.
the Central African country to democratic rule. The Maldives attempts to phase out smoking, plans to make it illegal for anyone currently under 19 years to buy cigarettes. A proposed law will prohibit the sale of tobacco products to those born after January 2007. This would effectively prevent future generations from smoking. And pop star Katy Perry completes her foray into space on an all-woman flight. 5 others, including Jeff Bezos' fiancée, were part of the Blue Origin crew. The entire journey lasted around 11 minutes. This is the first all-woman space crew since Russia's Valentina Tereshkova's historic
Katy Perry
flight in 1960.
घूमने.
फ्रेंड होगी ना उसकी, जेफ बेजोस की, सैंचेज की.
If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers.
रिवर्स नहीं है, टेम्पररीली 90 डेज के लिए सिर्फ रोका है कि प्रिपेयर करें वो लोग.
Well, that's going to be announced very soon, and we'll be discussing it.
US President Donald Trump is backing down. His tariff war is unraveling, forcing him to retreat. The US has announced
only
yet
for 90
another
days.
exemption, and
That
this
too for
time
the benefit
it is
of the
China
US.
that is getting relief. Chinese exports to the United States face a 145% tariff, but now a range of Chinese electronics are off the hook. This includes
Chinese
stuff like
electronics,
smartphones
all
and
electronics.
laptops. They won't face the 145% import tax. Interestingly, the pullback was not announced by President Trump. It was done by the US Customs. They released an exemption notice, a notice stating which products were exempt from tariffs. And it came as great news for big tech. They can now breathe easy. Without this relief, prices of gadgets would have skyrocketed. Everything from memory chips and solar cells to semiconductors would have cost more. There were about 20 product categories, all targeted by Trump's tariffs. Their prices were set to surge. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia had raised concerns. In fact, Apple was resorting to extreme measures. They airlifted 1.5 million iPhones.
ये बता रहे थे मुझे प्लेनों से आ रहे
Apple
थे
did it in record time to beat the tariffs to make sure that the phones were shipped before the tariffs kicked in. We told you about this last week. These iPhones were made in India. Usually it takes 30 hours for customs to clear such consignments. 30 hours. But this one was fast-tracked. It was dispatched within 6 hours, all because Apple wanted to beat Trump's tariff deadline.
बेचारा ने भी किया
Relax. Washington has given some
कोई बात नहीं,
relief,
स्टॉक आ गया
even though
तुम्हारा, मगर वो
it's
पुराने
temporary.
फोन्स हैं, आईफोन
The
14 है।
US president says no one can escape his tariffs. Let me quote. There was no exception. Nobody is getting off the hook. This is what he wrote on Truth Social. He reminded everyone that other duties on Chinese products still remain, like the 20% tariffs related to fentanyl. This was announced soon after Trump took office. And now he's planning a new set of tariffs, a different category altogether. Listen to this.
The tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors,
On
with
it by
chips,
he's on
and
air.
numerous other things. And that'll take place in the very near future.
The US president has ordered a national security investigation. It will focus on semiconductors and the entire electronics supply chain. Trump's Commerce Secretary has confirmed this. That's Howard Lutnick. He says new tariffs are coming in 2 months, and they will target high-end imports from China.
Remember, those
ये कौन है? इसको मैंने बहुत देखा है। अच्छा, Secretary of Commerce, Howard.
So all those products are going to come under semiconductors,
Lutnick.
and they're going to have a special.
ये बहुत
focused
साथ
type
साथ
of
रहता है
tariff to make
ट्रम्प
sure
के
that
मुझे
those
उसका नाम नहीं
products
पता
get
था
reshored.
कौन है
We
कौन अब पता
need to
चला
have
कॉमर्स सेक्रेटरी
semiconductors. We need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America.
So Trump and his team are going out of their way to convince everyone that this is not a retreat. It is more like a reshuffle. That their policy direction remains the same, but it's amply clear what this move is about. The US is taking a strategic timeout. And it comes after Trump's U-turn last week, when he froze all the tariffs for 90 days, all but China. He said America's trade partners will face a blanket tariff for 10% for 3 months, nothing more than that, only 10% till July. But he did not extend this relief to China. On the contrary, he raised tariffs on China at least twice in 2 days. By the end of it, US tariffs on China stood at a whopping 145%. And why was China singled out? Because they chose to retaliate. They hit back at the US with tariffs of their own. So Trump said China was forcing his hand. It makes no sense, but that's what he said. And he raised tariffs to 145%. He also said that China wants a deal with him, but they don't know how to ask for it. That was last week. Now, suddenly, he's climbing down, basically relenting under pressure.
Because उन्हें बहुत लोचे कर रखे
Because
चाइनीज
Trump's
ने
tariffs crashed the markets. They caused losses worth trillions of dollars. Wall Street was up in arms. CEOs were predicting a recession and investors were losing money. It took all of 8 days for Trump to shift course. The White House has tried to spin it as smart and strategic. But the world is not buying the spiel. America's credibility has taken a hit. Investor confidence is falling. The dollar has tanked to a 6-month low. And Trump's utterances are keeping investors on edge. The president is playing hopscotch with the economy, jumping from one threat to another, only to stumble and retreat.
देखते हो तो टाइम बताया लेट्स सी
कोई बात नहीं वी कैन अंडरस्टैंड शॉक थेरेपी के अलावा कोई ऑप्शन नहीं था That had to be done.
So Trump is putting caveats on his trade war. The question is why? After all the bravado, why is he backpedaling now? mainly because of two reasons. The first is America's dependency on China, and the second is public backlash. We look at both these factors.
Germany में हुआ था, who
Electronics is
cares?
the biggest category
Germany
of
में था
US
शायद.
imports from China. Your smartphones, your laptops and computers, these make up 20% of the total imports from China. Imagine a 145% tariff on this trade. It would have made electronics unaffordable for Americans. Just consider the iPhone. The 16 Pro Max sells for $1,200. The tariffs would have increased that price by a lot to almost $2,150 per phone. And why is that? Because China assembles almost 90% of all phones. It is basically a monopoly.
Incorrect.
Same with computers.
80%.
China makes 81% of laptops and personal computers. So if you tariff China, all
India
of this becomes
20%
more
बनाता है.
expensive, a lot more
iPhones.
expensive. American tech companies would have raised the price of their products. We're talking about a visible and sharp hike here, and Trump cannot afford that right now. Which is the second reason. Around 56% Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. That's 7 points up from last month. Clearly, this is the tariff effect. The White House is trying to spin it as a masterstroke, but ordinary people are not buying it. They can see the wild swings in the stock market, they can see the public U-turns of their president, and they can also see prices rising. Perhaps this is what prompted Trump to exempt certain goods. He has not explained why he did it. He simply attributed the exemptions
Yeah, I
to
can tell you
obvious
why.
reasons.
एंड में बताऊँ
Mr. President.
It's 20.
Pretty close, yeah. There could be a couple of exceptions for obvious reasons, but I would say 10% is a floor.
No.
Could we see more such exemptions? Well, it's certainly possible. Trump's exemptions only apply to the 145% rate. His fentanyl tariffs still apply on Chinese electronics, and that's around 20%. You won't see this impact immediately. Most companies will have stock lying around. For example, Apple has inventory for almost 6 weeks. But what happens after that? After that, prices will increase. And that is when Trump will face a reckoning. He was elected on the promise of lowering prices. If the opposite happens, expect a backlash. And that's just the start. The tariffs could hurt the economy beyond inflation. Top banks are predicting a recession in 2025, in this year. Billionaire Ray Dalio is predicting something worse than a recession. Now, Dalio, as you would know, is a hedge fund manager. He founded Bridgewater Associates in 1975. Today, it manages around $92 billion in assets. And Dalio feels something bad is coming, something worse than a recession, as he put it. What would that be?
चाहिए
A breakdown
CNBC
of the
का है.
current global order. He feels emerging powers will bring down the post-World War system. And this would create major conflicts.
हो चुके
Basically,
हैं.
a breakdown in global relations.
वो तो हो रहे हैं.
I know it sounds far-fetched,
So?
but Ray Dalio has a knack for this kind of things. He predicted the recession of 2008. And this time
Nobody
he
can
says
predict the
the
future.
US is very close to another one.
Okay.
All of this will build pressure on Donald Trump. His tariffs were supposed to shock the world into action, but that
It
may not
has.
be possible anymore. For starters, the shock effect is almost gone. These exemptions show that Trump is also worried. He is concerned about the blowback on US companies and consumers. Rest assured, other countries will capitalize on this. Secondly, there's a lot of confusion. We are seeing conflicting messages from Washington. Last week, the White House was pushing for iPhones made in America. Listen to this.
iPhones specifically, is that something that he thinks is the kind of technology that can move to the U.S.?
Absolutely. He believes we have the labor, we have the workforce, we have the resources to do it. And as you know, Apple has invested $500 billion here in the United States. So if Apple didn't think the United States could do it, they probably wouldn't have put up that big chunk of change.
Well, then why exempt tariffs on them?
Takes
Why
time.
stick with Chinese-made iPhones? All this confusion will weaken Trump's position. It gives the impression that there is no method to this madness, that Trump is simply going with the flow.
देखो सबके अपने अपने व्यू पॉइंट्स होते हैं, पर व्हाट ट्रम्प इज़ डूइंग वो अपने देश के लिए कर रहा है. और अगर आप ट्रम्प की स्पीचेस सुनोगे तो उसने बहुत क्लियरली ये बोला है कि भैया सब हमारा एडवांटेज ले रहे थे. ईयू बना ही इसीलिए था, उन्होंने बनाया ही ईयू इसलिए कि भैया हम यूएसए से एडवांटेज लें. नेटो का बना के उसमें एडवांटेज ले रहे हैं. पैसे वो कोई भी दे नहीं रहा था, एक दो देशों के अलावा बाकी जो देश थे वो दे ही नहीं रहे थे पैसे कि, और यूएसए जो है पूरा उसको फंड कर रहा था, नेटो को सारे वेब मतलब तुम्हें सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. और कह रहे हैं ईयू ने देखो किस तरह से किया हुआ है, कोई गाड़ियां हमारे वहाँ हमारी जाती नहीं है. और उनकी सारी गाड़ियां जो है यहाँ से सारी हमारे यहाँ पे इतनी भर भर के हैं, उसने एग्जाम्पल्स भी दिए, मर्सिडीज हो गई, फलाना हो गया, ठमकाना हो गया, तो वो कह रहे हैं दिस इज अनफेयर। और बात बिल्कुल ठीक है।
ये बताइए, क्या कोई अमेरिकन बता सकता है कि मोदी जी कैसा कर रहे हैं, अच्छा कर रहे हैं, बुरा कर रहे हैं?
Exactly.
क्या कोई अमेरिकन बता सकता है मोदी जी कैसा कर रहे हैं?
उनको क्या पता, अनलेस एंड अनटिल तुम
उसी
वहां पे
तरीके
रहे
से क्या कोई इंडियन बता सकता है कि अमेरिकन प्रेसिडेंट क्या कर रहा है
और वो ठीक कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा, अच्छा कर रहा है कि नहीं कर रहा? एग्जैक्टली।
आपको रहना पड़ेगा अमेरिका में, आपको अमेरिका में ऑपरेट करना पड़ेगा टू फिगर आउट व्हाट अमेरिकन प्रेसिडेंट इज डूइंग। वो तो वही बात होगी कि अमेरिकन आपको बता रहा है कि मोदी जी की पॉलिसी अच्छी है कि नहीं है, राइट?
वो तो है।
पॉइंट ये है कि एक शॉक ट्रीटमेंट था जब कंपनीज को कहा गया था कि यूएस में बनाओ, उन्होंने कहा था हम नहीं बनाएंगे। कंट्रीज मतलब कंपनीज को कहा गया था कि सारा मैन्युफैक्चर करो यूएस में, और वो कह रहे थे हम नहीं करेंगे, हमें प्रॉफिट बनता है बाय मेकिंग इन अदर कंट्रीज। उसको काउंटर करने के लिए ये था कि ठीक है, इसका मतलब तुम वहाँ बनवाते हो, यहाँ लेके आते हो, इंपोर्ट करते हो, तो इंपोर्ट को आप महंगा कर दो। इंपोर्ट को महंगा करोगे तो वो लोग नहीं, वहाँ से नहीं लेके आ पाएंगे, फिर उनको मजबूरी में यहाँ बनाना पड़ेगा। तो यहाँ तक तो ठीक था। जब टैरिफ्स लगे, यहाँ बनाना है, तो एप्पल ने बोला देखो भैया, बनाने के लिए इतना सारे इकोसिस्टम चाहिए, वो तो ख़त्म हो चुका है। अब इतने सारे पार्ट्स चाहिए, ये चाहिए, वो चाहिए। अगर हम पार्ट्स भी वहाँ से लेके आते हैं, असेंबल करते हैं, तो भी लॉस होगा। अर्थात आपको पूरी इंडस्ट्री का रिवाइवल करना पड़ेगा फ्रॉम स्क्रैच। फिर लोगों ने कहा स्क्रैच से करेंगे, लेबर वहाँ बहुत कॉस्टली है, वहाँ पे 1 घंटे का वियतनाम अमेरिका से $3 मिलता है, यहाँ पे 1 घंटे का आपको $20 देना पड़ेगा उस काम के लिए। स्किल्ड वर्कर वहाँ $3 पर आवर करता है, यहाँ $20, तो कैसे बनेगा सस्ता? नेट रिजल्ट आया उसका कि फिर अब ऑटोमेशन करिए, सब जगह मशीन्स लगा दीजिए, मैनुअल लेबर चाहिए नहीं। फिर इलॉन मस्क और लोगों ने बोला यस इट इज़ पॉसिबल, मैं रोबोट्स बना सकता हूँ, रोबोट्स पूरा कर सकते हैं सारा काम रोबोट्स, मगर इसके लिए टाइम लगेगा। तो नेट रिजल्ट है, अभी के लिए देखो क्या कर सकते हो। तो उसलिए पॉज लगाना पड़ा क्योंकि अभी रेडी नहीं है यूएस। और यूएस को भी अब ये 100% चेक हो गया है कि अगर मान लीजिए कोई चेक करना चाहता है एप्पल से, हाँ भैया आप बना सकते हो, यूएस में नहीं बना सकते, नोबडी इज गोइंग टू रिस्पॉन्ड। ये आपको एक्चुअली उनको अड़ंगे में डालना पड़ेगा टू सी कि क्या करते हैं। अब उन्होंने बता दिया नहीं बना सकते, राइट? उसके बावजूद भी एनवीडिया जो चिप्स बनाता है, उसने $500 बिलियन का अभी प्लांट बनाने के लिए बोला है टेक्सास में। $500 बिलियन का एनवीडिया चिप्स बना रहा है। तो कहने का मतलब है जब आप अकल लगाएं तो इट इज़ अचीवेबल। और सारा रोबोटिक्स से होगा। जैसे इन्होंने भी एक फुटेज दिखाई रोबोटिक्स की, मेजर लोग चाहिए नहीं,
वही तो
लोग चाहिए रोबोटिक्स को चलाने के लिए, खुद काम करने के लिए नहीं,
कम ही चाहिए।
तो स्किल सेट चेंज हो जाएंगे। बट रिसेशन का मतलब जो भी है, इकोनॉमी नीचे जा रही है,
वो टाइम बीइंग के लिए होगी, वो परमानेंट नहीं होगी, थोड़े टाइम के लिए जब ये महंगाई भी होगी पर और रिसेशन भी आ सकता है, पर ये होगा कि वो इतना लॉन्ग टर्म नहीं होगा,
ये जिंदगी
थोड़ा
में
बहुत अफेक्ट करेगा, पर ये कंट्री के लिए अच्छा है।
जिन लोगों को इकोनॉमिक्स की नॉलेज नहीं होती, ओ माय गॉड रिसेशन आ गया, तो क्या पहले नहीं आया था क्या? इट्स अ वेव, ऊपर जाने के बाद रिसेशन ही आता है, दैट्स लाइफ, इट हैज टू कम, क्योंकि ऐसे इकोनॉमी चलती है। लोगों को लगता है बहुत हो गया, पैनिक में लोग आते हैं, डाउन जाता है, ह्यूमन नेचर है।
नहीं
तो
पर साथ में दिस इज इम्पोर्टेंट, अगर यूएसए को मतलब फेयर डील्स चाहिए तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। शॉकिंग तो ये था कि बाकी इतने प्रेसिडेंट्स को ये सब दिख नहीं रहा था कि कितना अनफेयर ट्रेड हो रहा है, और आगे फ्यूचर में क्या फोर्सी कर रहे थे कि यूएसए का फ्यूचर क्या होगा।
प्रॉब्लम ये था कि डेफिसिट बढ़ रहा है।
हाँ।
और ऑल प्रेसिडेंट्स भी कोशिश कर रहे थे, मगर जरा कोशिश कर रहे थे, होता कुछ नहीं था। यहाँ पे एक प्रेसिडेंट आया, वो पूरी जान लगा रहा है डेफिसिट को सही करे। अब देखते हैं कितना फर्क पड़ता है।
तो चलो यार, आप भी शेयर करना अपने थॉट्स। चलते हैं, मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में बहुत ही जल्द। टिल देन टेक केयर एंड बाय बाय।
तो अगर आप मेरे इस चैनल पे नए हो तो जल्दी से सब्सक्राइब के बटन को हिट करो और बेल आइकन को क्लिक करो, ताकि आपको मेरा जब नया वीडियो मैं लगाऊं आपको उसके बारे में जल्दी से पता चल जाए।